Commander Zerth of the Cathari Imperial Fleet adjusted her forearms against the restraints of her command chair as the massive dreadnought vengeance of stars dropped out of hyperspace. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the carnage that awaited them in the Proxima sector. Debris fields stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction, the twisted remains of what had once been a proud Cathari battle fleet. Emergency beacons pulsed weakly among the wreckage, their orange lights casting eerie shadows across her chitinous features. "Report," she commanded, her voice carrying the authority that had earned her command of the most feared vessel in the Imperial Navy. Subcommander Vexen, her intelligence officer, manipulated the holographic display with practiced efficiency. 17 ships lost, Commander. The Dread Sovereign, Crimson Death, and Star Render among them. Estimated casualties exceed 40,000 personnel. Zarath's mandibles clicked in anger. 3 of their best ships, destroyed in what should have been a routine subjugation mission. What of the human vessel they were pursuing? The Defiant Hope was last detected here. Vexen highlighted a section of space near the largest debris field. Our scouts report it appeared heavily damaged before the final engagement. However, we've detected no human remains among the wreckage, Commander. Their ship seems to have vanished entirely. This troubled Zarath more than she cared to admit. The humans were a young species, barely having achieved faster-than-light travel 50 of their years ago. Their technology was primitive, their ships small and poorly armored. How could a single human vessel destroy an entire battle group? "Set course for the Titan 7 mining colony," she ordered. "If these humans survived, that's where they'll go. It's the only inhabited system within their ship's remaining range." The vengeance of stars accelerated toward its destination, its massive bulk cutting through space like a blade through silk. Zarath had spent the better part of 2 years hunting this particular human ship and its crew. They had been a persistent thorn in the Empire's expansion efforts, somehow always managing to stay one step ahead of Imperial forces. Their captain, a human named Marcus Chun, had become something of a legend among both human and Cathari forces. 3 days later, they arrived at Titan 7 to find exactly what Zarath had expected. The mining colony hung in space like a metallic flower, its multiple arms extending toward the resource-rich asteroid belt that surrounded the small star. Docked at one of the outer pylons was the Defiant Hope, her hull bearing fresh scorch marks and hastily applied patches. "Launch boarding pods," Zarath commanded. "Deploy Marine Companies Alpha through Delta. I want that ship taken intact and its crew captured alive." "Commander," interrupted Sensor Officer Clixon, "we're receiving a transmission from the colony administrator." "Put it through." The view screen shifted to show a pale, nervous-looking human male. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he spoke. "This is Administrator Henderson of Titan 7. We're prepared to surrender unconditionally. Please, we have civilians here, including children. We offer no resistance." "Wise choice, Administrator. You will allow our boarding parties access to the vessel Defiant Hope and surrender all personnel aboard her. Comply, and your colony will be spared." Henderson's face grew even paler. I'm afraid that's not possible, Commander. The ship's crew, they're not exactly our prisoners, but they're not exactly free either." Zarath's mandibles clicked impatiently. "Explain." 3 days ago, the Defiant Hope limped into our system badly damaged. Captain Chun and his crew requested emergency repairs and supplies. We couldn't refuse them shelter, but we also couldn't risk Imperial retribution if we were seen as harboring fugitives. "So what did you do?" Henderson's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "We offer them a deal. They could stay and recover, but they would have to submit to temporary detention. They would be treated well, given medical care for their wounded, but they would remain under guard until this situation could be resolved peacefully." Zarath felt a mixture of satisfaction and disappointment. Satisfaction that her quarry was finally within reach, but disappointment that there would be no climactic final battle. And Captain Chen agreed to this? He did. Said he wouldn't put civilian lives at risk for his war. He and his crew are currently housed in Detention Block C. They surrendered their weapons and have caused no trouble. Excellent. My boarding parties will secure both the vessel and the prisoners. You made the correct choice, Administrator. The boarding operation proceeded with typical Cathari efficiency. Companies Alpha and Beta secured the colony's critical systems, while companies Charlie and Delta split their attention between the Defiant Hope and the detention facilities. Within 2 hours, Zara TH received confirmation that both objectives had been secured without incident. She decided to inspect her prize personally. The Defiant Hope was indeed smaller than she had expected, barely a third the size of standard Cathari frigate. Her hull was a patchwork of different metals and alloys, clearly repaired many times over the course of her service life. Despite her worn appearance, Zara TH could see the careful attention to detail in her construction. Every system had been optimized for efficiency and reliability rather than raw power. Impressive in its own primitive way, commented Major Thex K, commander of the Marine Detachment. Their weapon systems are crude, but well-maintained. Shield generators are outdated, but reinforced with additional power coupling. This crew knows their ship. Zara TH nodded as she examined the bridge. The command stations were designed for beings much smaller than Cathari, forcing her to crouch uncomfortably. Everything was cramped and utilitarian, but she could sense the care with which every component had been installed and maintained. Where's the crew now? Detention Block C, as the administrator indicated. 23 humans total, including their captain. All have submitted to medical examination and processing. I want to see them. The detention facility was a standard civilian holding area, designed more for drunk minors and minor criminals than military prisoners. The individual cells were clean and reasonably comfortable, each containing a bed, desk, and basic sanitation facilities. As Zara TH walked down the central corridor, she could see the human prisoners in their cells, some reading, others sleeping, a few engaged in quiet conversation. At the far end of the block, in a slightly larger cell designed for colony administrators who might need temporary holding, sat Captain Marcus Chen. Zara TH had studied his service record extensively. 38 years old, formerly a captain in the Human Defense Fleet before that organization's dissolution 3 years earlier. Decorated veteran of the Centauri conflicts, skilled tactician, and pilot. The file photos hadn't done him justice, however. Even seated calmly on the simple bed in his cell, there was something about his presence that commanded attention. He looked up as she approached, his brown eyes meeting hers without fear or hostility. His dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and a pale scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, but his face wore an expression of calm resignation. "Commander Zergich, I presume," he said, rising to face her. His voice was steady, respectful without being servile. "I've heard much about you, as I have about you, Captain Shun. You've caused considerable trouble for the Empire. I've defended my people as best I could. Nothing more, nothing less." Zara TH studied him through the transparent aluminum barrier. "Your people surrendered to Imperial authority 2 years ago. Your own government ordered all resistance forces to stand down. My government was disbanded when they surrendered. I answer to a higher authority now, which is..." Chen smiled slightly. "My conscience, Commander, and the oath I swore to protect human lives wherever they might be threatened. Noble sentiments. Futile but noble." Zara TH gestured to the detention facility around them. "Yet here you are, captured without a fight. Where are those noble principles now? Right where they've always been. I won't see civilians harmed because of my actions. Administrator Henderson offered us sanctuary in exchange for temporary detention. I accepted because it kept his people safe. And your crew agreed to this? They follow my lead. They knew the risks when they chose to continue the fight." Zara TH found herself oddly impressed by the human captain's composure. Most species, when faced with capture by the Cathari Empire, showed fear, anger, or desperate bravado. Chen displayed none of these emotions. He seemed genuinely at peace with his situation. You do realize that your capture effectively ends all organized human resistance? Without the Defiant Hope and her crew, there's no one left to coordinate rebel activities. Perhaps, or perhaps others will step up to take our place. Unlikely. Your species lacks the unity and discipline necessary for effective resistance. You're too individualistic, too chaotic. The Empire will bring order to your worlds. Order? Shin seemed to consider the word carefully. Is that what you call the mining operations on Kepler 442b? The forced relocations on New Geneva? The labor camps on Proxima Station? Zara TH's mandibles clicked in annoyance. The Empire brings prosperity and purpose to underdeveloped worlds. Your species will learn to appreciate the benefits of imperial rule. Will we? I've seen those benefits firsthand, Commander. I've seen human children working 18-hour shifts in tritium mines. I've seen families separated because they didn't meet production quotas. I've seen elderly humans left to die because they were no longer useful to the Empire. The strong survive, the weak perish. This is the natural order. No, Commander. That's the imperial order. There's a difference. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Major Thex K. Commander, we've completed our inspection of the human vessel. Their logs confirm they were indeed responsible for the destruction of Battle Group 7. Ow! The question burst from Zara TH before she could stop it. How does a single light cruiser destroy 17 Imperial warships? Chen looked surprised. 17? We only engaged 12 ships directly. The others what? The others were destroyed by their own weapons. We used a cascade torpedo to overload the Dread Sovereign's main reactor. The explosion triggered a chain reaction through the entire formation. Zara TH stared at him. A cascade torpedo? Those weapons are theoretical at best. Human technology couldn't possibly. Human ingenuity found a way, Commander. We don't have your raw firepower or your advanced materials, but we have something your Empire has forgotten, which is creativity, innovation, the willingness to try impossible things because they just might work. Major Thex K interjected. Commander, there's something else. We found several unusual modifications to their ship systems. Power redistribution networks that should be impossible, weapon configurations that violate basic engineering principles, but somehow function perfectly. Chen shrugged. My chief engineer is very good at her job. Chief Engineer Sarah Voss, Zara TH said, consulting her data pad. Age 26, graduated from a Mars Technical Institute with honors in theoretical physics and applied engineering. Her academic record shows exceptional creativity, but a tendency to ignore conventional limitations. That's Sarah. Give her a problem that everyone says can't be solved, and she'll solve it by dinner time. Zara TH found herself more intrigued than she cared to admit. The destruction of Battle Group 7 had been attributed to some unknown human superweapon or possibly alien intervention. The idea that it had been accomplished through clever engineering and unorthodox tactics was both impressive and disturbing. We'll be departing for Imperial Center within the hour, she informed Chun. You and your crew will stand trial before the High Council for acts of piracy and rebellion against Imperial authority. Understand. Will Administrator Henderson and his people be harmed? The colony administrator cooperated fully. His people will not be molested. Thank you. That simple expression of gratitude troubled Zartich more than she expected. Most prisoners in Chen's position would be pleading for their lives or making threats. This human seemed genuinely more concerned about the safety of people who weren't even his responsibility. As she made her way back to the Vengeance of Stars, Zartich found herself thinking about the conversation. There had been something in Chen's manner, a quiet confidence that suggested he knew something she didn't. Not the desperate bluffing of a cornered animal, but the calm assurance of someone who still held cards he hadn't yet played. The prisoner transfer proceeded without incident. The human crew was moved to the Vengeance of Stars brig under heavy guard, while their ship was secured in the Dreadnought's hangar bay. Administrator Henderson provided a full report on their 3-day stay, confirming that they had indeed remained peacefully in detention and caused no trouble. As the Imperial Dreadnought prepared to depart Titan 7, Zara TH reviewed the intelligence reports one final time. Something nagged at her, a detail that didn't quite fit the pattern. The humans had been model prisoners, cooperative, and compliant. Their ships showed signs of battle damage, but also recent repairs using colony resources. Everything suggested exactly what it appeared to be: a desperate crew seeking sanctuary and accepting detention as the price for civilian safety. So why did she feel like she was missing something important? The answer came 6 hours into their journey toward Imperial Center. Subcommander Vexen approached her command station with an expression of confusion and concern. "Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from Sector Command. Battle Group 12 reports they are under attack in the Vega system." Under attack? By whom? There are no known rebel forces operating in that sector. That's just it, Commander. The attack profile matches the tactics used against Battle Group 7. Cascade weapons, coordinated strikes against reactor systems, surgical precision targeting of command and control nodes. Zara TH felt a chill run down her spine. That's impossible. The only crew capable of such tactics is sitting in our brig. Yes, Commander. That's what makes this so disturbing. Before Zara TH could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Emergency lights bathed the bridge in harsh red illumination as damage control teams scrambled to their stations. "Report," she barked. "Massive systems failure in the main computer core," reported Chief Engineer Morkay. "Someone has introduced a cascading virus into our primary networks. All major systems are shutting down in sequence." "How is that possible? Our networks are isolated from external access." "Unknown, Commander. The virus appears to have been dormant in our systems and only activated when we reached sufficient distance from Titan 7. On the tactical display, Zara TH watched in horror as her ship's systems died one by one. Weapons offline. Zu offline. Life support switching to emergency power. Navigation compromised. And then, impossibly, Captain Marcus Chen's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "Commander Zarth, this is Captain Chun. I believe we need to talk." Commander Zarth stared at the communication panel in disbelief as Captain Chen's voice continued to echo through her dying ship. Around her, the bridge crew worked frantically to restore critical systems, their usual efficiency hampered by the systematic cascade failures spreading through every network. "How are you accessing our communications system?" she demanded, her voice tight with barely controlled rage. "The same way we accessed everything else, Commander. Your people were very thorough in their inspection of the Defiant Hope, but they missed a few things. We humans have gotten very good at hiding things in plain sight." Zaratich signaled to her communications officer, who shook his head helplessly. The transmission was coming from everywhere and nowhere, somehow integrated into the ship's own systems in a way that made it impossible to block or trace. "What do you want, Shen?" "To talk. Face to face. Your brig, 5 minutes." The channel closed, leaving the bridge in stunned silence, broken only by the continued alarms and frantic activity of the damage control teams. Major Thex K approached her command station, his sidearm drawn and his 4 eyes blazing with anger. "Commander, recommend we flood the detention level with neurotoxin gas. Whatever the humans have done, we can end this immediately. And kill our only source of information about how they've compromised our ship?" "I think not, Major." Zara TH rose from her command chair, checking her own weapon. "Continue restoration efforts. I'll speak with our prisoner." "Commander, this could be a trap." "Everything about this situation is a trap, Major. The question is who set it for whom." The journey to the detention level gave Zara TH time to think, and what she was thinking disturbed her greatly. The humans had been model prisoners for over 6 hours. They had submitted to searches, surrendered their weapons, and shown no signs of resistance. Yet somehow, They had introduced a virus sophisticated enough to cripple a Cathari dreadnought into systems that were supposedly isolated and secure. The detention level appeared normal at first glance. The guard stations were manned, the security fields were active, and the prisoners were visible in their cells. But as RTH approached Captain Chen's cell, she noticed subtle differences. The guards were alert, but not tense, as if they were expecting her. The other human prisoners were awake and watching, their expressions calm rather than fearful. Chen stood waiting for her at the front of his cell, hands clasped behind his back in a relaxed posture. When she stopped in front of the security field, he smiled slightly. "Thank you for coming, Commander. I know this situation must be confusing for you." "Explain." "Now, of course. But first a question. Are your sensors still functional?" ZRTH checked her wrist display. "Minimally." "Why?" "Because in approximately 3 minutes, you're going to want to see what's happening outside your ship." Before she could respond, Chun continued. "Commander, what do you know about human behavioral psychology?" "Irrelevant philosophical concepts. Your species lacks the mental discipline of more advanced races. Actually, we lack the mental rigidity of more advanced races. There's a difference." Chun gestured around a detention facility. "Tell me, what did you see when you first visited us here?" "Defeated prisoners accepting their fate. Exactly what we wanted you to see. Humans are natural actors, Commander. We've been pretending to be something we're not for our entire evolutionary history. Prey pretending to be predators, the weak pretending to be strong, the few pretending to be many." The implications hit ZRTH like a physical blow. The surrender, the detention, all of it was staged. Administrator Henderson is a good man, but he's also a practical one. When we arrived at Titan 7 3 days ago, we didn't just request repairs and supplies. We offered him a choice. Cooperate with us in a deception that would save his colony, or watch his people become collateral damage in a battle they couldn't possibly survive. What kind of deception? The kind that convinced the most feared commander in the Cathari Imperial Navy to take 23 human prisoners aboard her flagship without a single security scan that might have detected the modifications we made to our own bodies during those 3 days in detention. ZRTH felt her blood run cold. "What modifications?" Chun held up his right hand, and ZRTH saw something that made her mandibles click in shock. Embedded just beneath the skin of his palm was a small metallic device, barely visible but undeniably present. Biointegrated quantum communicators. Impossible to detect with standard scans because they're grown rather than implanted using a technique Sarah developed based on captured Cathari medical technology. Each of my crew members carries one, allowing us to maintain constant communication and coordination no matter where we are. That's impossible. Quantum communication requires massive power sources and stabilization equipment. That's what everyone said. Sarah proved everyone wrong. Again, Chen's expression grew more serious. "But that's not the important part, Commander. The important part is what we did while your people were so carefully inspecting our ship." The security alarm in ZRTH's wrist display began flashing urgent red. She looked down to see proximity warnings indicating multiple contacts approaching the vengeance of stars at high speed. "Check your sensors, Commander." ZRTH activated her emergency communicator. "Bridge report." Subcommander Vexen's voice crackled through the interference. "Commander, we're detecting 7 ships approaching at attack velocity. Configuration unknown, but they're moving in coordinated formation. Identity unknown, Commander. They appear to be running full stealth until now. Our damaged sensors can't get clear readings." Chun stepped closer to the security field separating them. "Those would be the other crews, Commander. 7 ships, 23 crews, 161 of the finest pilots, engineers, and fighters humanity has to offer. That's impossible." Intelligence reports indicated the Defiant Hope was the last organized human resistance vessel. Intelligence reports were wrong. We weren't the last resistance ship, Commander. We were the bait. The full scope of the trap began to dawn on ZRTH. The attack on Battle Group 7. You deliberately let yourself be tracked. We had to make it believable. A desperate last stand, heavy damage, a flight to the nearest safe harbor. Your people had to believe they were chasing a defeated enemy, not walking into an ambush. An ambush that required you to sacrifice yourselves. Did it? Chen's smile widened. Commander, what's the current status of your weapons systems? Zara TH checked her display. Oh, fine. The virus you introduced has shut down primary power to all weapons arrays. And your shields. Also offline. Navigation. Limited to emergency maneuvering only. Communications? Internal only. External communications are completely compromised. Chen nodded approvingly. Sarah's virus is very thorough. It identifies and systematically shuts down everything that might be used to fight or flee, while leaving life support and basic systems intact. We're not here to commit murder, Commander. We're here to make a statement. The ship shuddered slightly as the approaching vessels began their attack run. Through the detention facility's small viewports, Zara TH could see flashes of weapons fire illuminating the darkness of space. Your little fleet can't possibly hope to destroy a ship of this class, she said, trying to project more confidence than she felt. Destroy? Who said anything about destroying? Chen looked puzzled. Commander, we're not trying to blow up your ship. We're trying to capture it. Before Zara TH could respond, the lights went out. Emergency illumination kicked in immediately, bathing the detention level in harsh blue light. But in those few seconds of darkness, something had changed. The security fields around the human prisoners' cells had deactivated, and Captain Chun was no longer behind the barrier. He stood in the corridor, calmly adjusting a device on his wrist that glowed with soft amber light. Around him, his crew emerged from their cells with similar devices and expressions of quiet determination. Ow! The security system that keeps us locked up runs on the same network as everything else. When that goes down, Chen shrugged. Sarah is really very good at her job. Major Thex KS voice crackled through the facility's communication system. All units, security breach in the detention level. Human prisoners have escaped and are considered extremely dangerous. Chun touched his wrist device, and his voice echoed through the ship's internal communications. Attention crew of the Vengeance of Stars. This is Captain Marcus Chun of the Human Resistance Fleet. Your ship is now under our control. Any attempt to restore weapons or navigation will result in immediate shutdown of life support systems. Remain at your stations, and you'll not be harmed. Zara TH drew her sidearm, but Chun held up a hand in a peaceful gesture. Commander, please. There's no need for violence. We're not your enemies. You've captured my ship and threatened my crew. How are you not my enemies? Because we don't want to rule the galaxy, Commander. We don't want to conquer worlds or subjugate species. We just want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. Unfortunately, your empire doesn't seem inclined to allow that. The sound of running feet echoed through the corridors as security teams rushed to respond to the breach. Chun listened for a moment, then touched his communicator again. Sarah, initiate Protocol 7. Throughout the ship, the lights flickered in a complex pattern. When they stabilized, Zara TH heard Major Thexke's frustrated voice over the communicator. All security teams report movement restrictions. Blast doors have sealed automatically and will not respond to override commands. What have you done? Zara TH demanded. Divided your ship into sections and restricted movement between them. Your crew is safe and secure, but they can't coordinate any kind of counterattack. My people, on the other hand, have complete freedom of movement thanks to access codes Sarah extracted from your computer systems. Chen began walking toward the exit from the detention level, and his crew fell into formation around him with military precision. Despite having been prisoners moments before, they moved like a highly trained unit that had worked together for years. Where are you going? To your bridge, Commander. We have a schedule to keep. I won't allow it. Chen stopped and looked back at her with an expression of genuine regret. Commander, you don't have a choice. Your ship is dead in space, surrounded by 7 fully armed and operational human vessels. Your crew is scattered and unable to mount any coordinated resistance. You can come with us peacefully and retain command of your people, or you can fight us and watch your crew get hurt when they try to defend a hopeless position. The logic was undeniable, but Zarth's military training rebelled against the idea of surrendering her ship to prisoners. She raised her weapon, targeting Chen's center mass. I am Commander Zarth of the Cathari Imperial Fleet. I do not surrender my command to anyone. Chen nodded respectfully. I understand, Commander. Command responsibility is something I take very seriously as well. He touched his wrist device once more. All human teams implement Protocol 9. Full spectrum demonstration. The lights went out again, but this time they stayed out. In the absolute darkness, Zarth heard the soft whisper of movement around her. When emergency lighting finally activated, she found herself surrounded by Chen's crew, each of them holding weapons that definitely hadn't been there when they were searched. Where did you get those? We made them, replied a young woman with short auburn hair and grease-stained fingers. 3 days in that machine shop gave me plenty of time to fabricate some basic equipment from raw materials. The colony had everything we needed. Shun gestured to the woman. Commander Zarth, meet Chief Engineer Sarah Voss, the person responsible for most of your current difficulties. Sarah smiled cheerfully. Pleasure to meet you, Commander. I've read your service record. Very impressive tactical skills. I particularly admired your victory at the Battle of Kepler Station. You studied Imperial military records? We study everything, Commander. Know your enemy, understand their strengths and weaknesses, find ways to turn their own advantages against them. It's basic human nature. Shun stepped forward. Commander, your weapon, please. We don't want anyone to get hurt accidentally. Zarth looked around at the faces surrounding her. Young and old, male and female, all different, but united by a common determination that reminded her of her own crew's dedication to the Empire. Slowly, she lowered her sidearm and handed it to Chun. Thank you. Now, shall we proceed to the bridge? I believe your crew will want to hear from their commander that they're not in immediate danger. The journey through the ship revealed the true scope of human planning. At every strategic point, blast doors had sealed automatically, dividing the massive dreadnought into manageable sections. Human team members appeared at regular intervals, having somehow moved through the ship's service corridors and maintenance shafts to establish control of critical systems. How long have you been planning this? Zarth asked as they walked. In detail, 3 months. In general, since the day your empire decided that humanity needed to be conquered for its own good. The empire brings order and prosperity to chaotic worlds. The empire brings slavery and exploitation to free peoples, Sarah interjected. I've seen the mining operations on Kepler 442b, Commander. Children working in tunnels so small that adults can't fit, extracting rare minerals for Imperial technology. Those children die of lung disease before they reach adulthood, and the Empire considers this an acceptable cost of doing business. The Empire provides food, shelter, and purpose to those children. Without Imperial guidance, they would starve. Without Imperial occupation, they would be in school learning to build a better future for themselves, Chen replied. Commander, I've seen free human worlds, and I've seen Imperial colonies. The difference is staggering. They reached the bridge to find it under complete human control. Chen's crew had taken positions at every major station, while the Cathari officers stood in a group near the rear of the bridge under guard. Sub-Commander Vexen approached as they entered. Commander, are you injured? I'm fine, Vexen. What's the status of the ship? All major systems remain offline. The humans have established control of every critical function. Attempts to restore primary power have been blocked by their virus. Chen moved to the captain's chair, but didn't sit. Instead, he gestured for Zarth to take her position. This is still your ship, Commander. Your crew needs to hear from you that they're safe and that you're still in command. Am I? In command, I mean. Of your crew's welfare and day-to-day operations, absolutely. Of the ship's destination and mission parameters. Chen shrugged. That's become more complicated. Zartich settled into her command chair and looked around the bridge. Her officers were clearly shaken, but unharmed. The humans worked at the control stations with easy competence, suggesting they had studied Kethari technology extensively. Open a ship-wide channel, she ordered. The communications officer, a young human male, manipulated the controls with practiced ease. Channel open, Commander. Attention crew of the Vengeance of Stars. This is Commander Zartich. Our vessel has been taken over by human resistance forces, but I want to assure you that we are not in immediate danger. The humans have demonstrated no hostile intent toward our personnel. Remain at your stations and await further orders. She closed the channel and looked at Chun. Now what? Now we wait for the next phase of the operation to begin, which is... Chun consulted a device that projected a holographic display showing ship positions and tactical information. In approximately 12 minutes, Imperial Battle Group Epsilon will drop out of hyperspace in response to your ship's emergency beacon. Zartich's mandibles clicked in surprise. What emergency beacon? Our communications are down. Your communications are down. Ours work just fine. Sarah grinned from her position at the engineering station. We've been broadcasting a distress signal from your ship for the past 30 minutes. Standard Imperial codes, requesting immediate assistance, reporting critical systems failure, and possible hostile contact. Battle Group Epsilon will arrive expecting to rescue us, and instead find you waiting for them. Actually, they'll find something much more interesting than that. Chen's expression grew serious. Commander, what do you know about the battle that destroyed your Battle Group 7? You used some kind of cascade weapon to overload the Dread Sovereign's reactor core. That's what happened, yes. But do you understand why it worked? Zartich considered the question. Your weapons somehow bypassed our shields and armor to strike directly at our most vulnerable systems. Exactly. And do you know why your weapons can't do the same thing to us? Human technology is too primitive to support the kind of power requirements necessary for... No, Commander. Human technology is too different. Your weapons are designed to fight ships that work like Kethari ships. Our ships work on completely different principles. The tactical display lit up with new contacts as Battle Group Epsilon dropped out of hyperspace, exactly as Chun had predicted. 8 Imperial warships in standard attack formation, led by the battlecruiser Star of Conquest. Incoming transmission, reported the human communications officer. Put it through. The view screen showed the bridge of the Star of Conquest and the familiar face of Admiral Korax, one of the Empire's most experienced fleet commanders. Commander Zartich, we received your distress signal. What is your status? Zartich looked at Chun, who nodded encouragingly. Admiral, the Vengeance of Stars has been taken over by human resistance forces. They appear to be using us as bait for some kind of trap. Understood. Can you regain control of your ship? Before Zartich could answer, Chen stepped into view of the communications pickup. Admiral Korax, this is Captain Marcus Chun of the Human Resistance Fleet. Your ships are now surrounded and outgunned. I suggest you prepare to receive surrender terms. Admiral Korax's expression shifted from concern to anger. Captain, you are outnumbered 8-7, and we have a dreadnought. Even damaged, the Vengeance of Stars outguns your entire fleet. Actually, Admiral, you're outnumbered 8-157, and the Vengeance of Stars isn't damaged. She's been converted. On the tactical display, space around the Imperial fleet began to shimmer as hundreds of previously invisible ships decloaked simultaneously. Human vessels of every size and configuration, from tiny fighter craft to massive converted cargo haulers bristling with weapons, surrounded the Kethari formation in a perfect sphere. And in that moment, Commander Zartich realized that everything she thought she knew about human capabilities had been wrong. The silence on the bridge was absolute. Admiral Korax stared at the tactical display in stunned disbelief. watching as sensor readings confirmed what his eyes were telling him. 157 human vessels had appeared from nowhere, their combined firepower focused on his 8-ship battle group with mathematical precision. Commander ZRTH felt her worldview cracking like ice under pressure. The Empire's intelligence services had assured her that human resistance was limited to scattered survivors hiding in remote systems. The Defiant Hope and her crew were supposedly the last organized opposition to Imperial rule. Yet here was evidence of a fleet that dwarfed anything the Empire had imagined humans capable of fielding. "Ow!" she whispered, but Chen heard her. "Humans are very good at being underestimated, Commander. We've had 2 years to prepare for this moment, while your Empire believed our resistance was broken." Admiral Korax found his voice. "Captain Chun, even with superior numbers, your primitive weapons cannot penetrate Imperial armor and shielding. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Chun smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Admiral, respectfully, you're thinking like a Cathari. You're assuming we're going to fight you the way you would fight us." He nodded to Sarah, who began entering commands at the engineering station. Around the bridge, holographic displays activated, showing detailed technical readouts of every ship in Admiral Korax's battle group. "What you're seeing, Admiral, are complete technical specifications for every vessel in your fleet. Hull composition, shield frequencies, weapon power cycles, reactor configurations, crew complement, even the personal service records of your senior officers." Admiral Korax's 4 eyes widened in shock. "That information is classified at the highest levels." "Was classified," Sarah corrected cheerfully. "Amazing what you can learn when you really put your mind to it. Did you know that Admiral Vorthack's wife is having an affair with his chief of staff? Or that Captain Rexan of the Blade of Vengeance has been skimming from his ship's supply requisitions for the past 18 months? How could you possibly know such things? Because we've been watching you, Admiral, learning from you, studying every aspect of your technology, your tactics, your culture, your individual psychology." Chun gestured to the tactical display. "Every ship in your battle group has been under surveillance for months. We know your standard formations, your emergency protocols, your officers' decision-making patterns under stress." ZRTH realized with growing horror where this was leading. "You're not planning to destroy them. You're planning to capture them. All of them," Chun confirmed. "Without a single casualty, if possible." "That's impossible. Even with superior numbers, boarding actions against prepared Imperial crews would result in massive losses on both sides. Would result in massive losses if we try to board them in the traditional sense. But who says we need to board them at all?" Sarah's fingers danced across her control panel, and the tactical display shifted to show power signatures from each of the human vessels. ZRTH recognized the energy patterns immediately. They were identical to the virus that had crippled the vengeance of stars. "You're going to hack their computer systems." "We already have," Chen replied. "The moment they dropped out of hyperspace, our signals intelligence ships began downloading everything from their primary databases. Right now, we know more about the operational status of Admiral Korax's fleet than he does." On the view screen, Admiral Korax was consulting with his staff officers, clearly trying to understand the tactical situation. His expression grew increasingly frustrated as he received reports from his various department heads. Chun touched his communicator. "Admiral, are you experiencing any unusual system anomalies?" "What kind of anomalies?" "Oh, minor things. Communications lag, sensor drift, slight power fluctuations in your main reactors. The kind of problems that might occur if someone was accessing your computer networks without permission." Admiral Korax's mandibles clicked angrily. "Our networks are isolated and secured by the best Imperial encryption technology." "Your encryption is excellent by Cathari standards," Sarah agreed. "Unfortunately for you, humans don't think like Cathari. We don't try to break your codes, Admiral. We find ways around them." "Explain." Chun stepped forward. "Every one of your ships contains thousands of individual systems. Life support, navigation, weapons control, internal communications, waste processing, food preparation, entertainment networks. Each system has its own miniature computer to manage basic functions. Basic maintenance systems pose no security risk. They have no access to critical ship functions. They don't need access to critical systems, Admiral. They just need access to each other. Sarah pulled up a three-dimensional diagram showing the network architecture of a typical Cathari warship. Watch what happens when we introduce a simple maintenance routine into your food preparation computers. The diagram lit up as a small program spread from system to system, using perfectly legitimate maintenance protocols to move through the ship's network. Within minutes, it had reached life support, then internal communications, then secondary sensor arrays. A maintenance routine that asks each system to share diagnostic information with neighboring systems for efficiency optimization. Perfectly normal, perfectly legal according to your own software protocols. But every time the routine moves to a new system, it learns a little more about the ship's overall structure and capabilities. Admiral Korax watched in fascination and growing alarm as the program reached his ship's primary command networks. Clever, but our command systems have additional security measures. They do, Chin agreed. But by the time our routine reaches them, it knows the access codes for every system it's already penetrated. It doesn't need to break into command functions. It just needs to convince them that it's a legitimate diagnostic program reporting routine maintenance data. And once it's inside the command systems, it can do anything we want it to do. Shut down weapons, disable shields, lock down blast doors, even override life support if necessary. Though we hope that won't be required. Zara TH watched the demonstration with professional appreciation and personal dread. The elegance of the human approach was undeniable. Rather than attempting to overpower Imperial defenses, they had found ways to turn those defenses against themselves. How long have you had this capability? Since about 3 months after the Empire conquered our first world, Chen replied. The moment we realized that traditional military resistance was hopeless, we began developing alternative approaches. Humans are remarkably adaptable when survival is at stake. Admiral Korax's image flickered on the view screen as system malfunctions began affecting his ship's communications array. His voice carried a note of desperation that Zara TH had never heard from a senior Imperial officer. Captain Chun, what are your terms? Simple, Admiral. Order your battle group to stand down and prepare to be boarded. Your crews will be treated with respect and dignity. Officers who cooperate will retain their commands under human oversight. Those who resist will be removed from their positions, but otherwise unharmed. And then we're going to have a conversation about the future of human-Cathari relations. Admiral Korax looked around his bridge, clearly seeing the same system failures that were affecting communications. His tactical officer was shaking his head helplessly, indicating that weapons and shield were no longer responding to commands. I need guarantees for the safety of my crews. You have my word as a human officer and the word of every captain in this fleet. We are not conquerors, Admiral. We're liberators. Very well. All ships, stand down and prepare to receive boarding parties. Over the next 2 hours, Zara TH watched the most remarkable military operation she had ever witnessed. Human boarding parties moved through the disabled Imperial ships with efficiency that spoke of extensive planning and preparation. They were courteous but firm with captured crew members, professional in their handling of equipment and supplies, and show particular care for wounded personnel. Most surprisingly, they kept their promises. Imperial officers who cooperated retained their positions and responsibilities, working alongside human technical teams to ensure smooth operation of critical systems. Those who attempted resistance were disarmed and detained, but treated well according to standard military protocols. This is not how conquerors behave, Zara TH observed, watching feed from various ships as humans and Cathari work together to maintain essential functions. Because we're not conquerors, Chen replied. We're people who want to go home to our families and live our lives in peace. Unfortunately, your empire doesn't seem inclined to let that happen. So you decided to steal 8 Imperial warships instead? We decided to send a message, and to acquire the resources necessary to continue defending ourselves until that message is received and understood. Sub-Commander Vexen approached Chen's position near the captain's chair. Captain, I don't understand your strategy. Even with 9 Imperial ships under your control, you can't hope to defeat the entire Cathari fleet. The Empire will respond with overwhelming force. Will it, Sub-Commander? Let me ask you something. What would happen if the Empire lost 9 frontline warships in a single engagement? The High Council would authorize massive retaliation. Every available ship would be committed to hunting down and destroying the responsible parties. Exactly, which would leave Imperial space essentially defenseless while your entire fleet chases us around the galaxy. Chen smiled. Tell me, Sub-Commander, how many worlds has the Empire conquered in the past 5 years? Vexen considered the question. Approximately 47 systems, with a total population of nearly 6 billion sentient beings. And how many of those worlds do you think are truly happy under Imperial rule? The Empire brings order and prosperity. Happiness is a luxury that comes with time and proper education. I see. So if the Imperial fleet were suddenly called away on an extended campaign, those recently conquered worlds would simply continue their peaceful existence under minimal occupation forces? The implications hit Vexen like a physical blow. You're counting on rebellion. I'm counting on the natural desire of free beings to remain free. The Empire rules through fear and overwhelming force, Sub-Commander. Remove that force, and people remember what it feels like to make their own choices. Sarah looked up from her engineering station. Marcus, we're receiving reports from deep space monitoring stations. Long-range sensors show multiple Imperial battle groups moving to intercept us. How many? At least 12 major formations. Looks like they're pulling ships from across 3 sectors. Chen nodded approvingly. Just as we hoped. Admiral Corax, would you care to comment on Imperial strategic doctrine? Admiral Corax, who had been listening to the conversation from his position near the communication station, looked thoughtful. Standard doctrine calls for overwhelming response to major threats. The High Council will authorize whatever force is necessary to ensure your fleet's destruction, even if it means leaving occupied worlds essentially undefended. Imperial peacekeeping forces are sufficient to maintain order in pacified systems. Are they? How large are these peacekeeping forces, typically? Admiral Corax hesitated, clearly realizing he was being led toward an uncomfortable conclusion. Minimal. Perhaps 1 or 2 light cruisers per system, supported by orbital platforms and ground-based installations. And if those systems suddenly found themselves facing organized resistance from their own populations, supported by weapons and technical expertise from liberated Imperial armories, the Empire would. Admiral Corax fell silent, his 4 eyes widening in understanding. The Empire would find itself fighting a galaxy-wide rebellion with most of its fleet committed to chasing 23 humans and 9 stolen ships through deep space. Chun stood and walked to the tactical display. Admiral, Sub-Commander Vexen, Commander Zartish, you are all experienced military officers. You understand strategic thinking. What would be the likely outcome of such a scenario? The silence stretched for long moments as the full scope of human planning became clear. This wasn't just about capturing a few ships or winning a single battle. This was about fundamentally altering the balance of power throughout the known galaxy. Commander Zarth found her voice first. You're not just fighting for human independence. You're trying to bring down the entire Imperial system. We're trying to create a situation where the Empire has to choose between maintaining its conquests and pursuing vengeance against us. Based on our analysis of Imperial psychology and historical precedent, we believe your leadership will choose vengeance. And while they're chasing us, billions of oppressed beings across dozens of worlds will have the opportunity to reclaim their freedom. Some will succeed, some will fail, but all will have the chance to choose their own destiny. Admiral Korax stepped forward, his expression grim. Captain Shun, you are gambling with the lives of every sentient being in Imperial space. If you're wrong about the scope of rebellion, if the peacekeeping forces prove more effective than you anticipate, millions will die for nothing. They're already dying, Admiral. The only question is whether they die as slaves or as free beings fighting for something better. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent signal from Sarah's station. Marcus, we're getting reports from our deep space network. The first rebellion has already started. Where? Kepler, 442b. The mining colony where they've been using human child labor. Apparently, the workers got hold of some mining explosives and decided they'd had enough of Imperial management. Chen's expression grew serious. Casualties, light so far. The rebels took over the administrative complex and the main processing facility. Imperial peacekeepers have withdrawn to their orbital station and are requesting immediate reinforcement. Signal our people in that system to provide whatever support they can without revealing our fleet locations. Admiral Korax looked stunned. You have people in Imperial systems? Admiral, we have people everywhere. Humans have a talent for blending in, for being overlooked, for seeming harmless right up until the moment we're not. Chun returned to the captain's chair. The question now is what happens next. What do you mean? I mean that your empire is about to face a choice that will define its future. Continue the current path of expansion and oppression and face escalating resistance that will eventually tear the Imperial system apart. Or find a different approach that allows all species to coexist peacefully. Commander Zarth studied Chen's face, searching for signs of deception or uncertainty. She found neither. You really believe you can win this war? Commander, we've already won. The question is how much damage gets done before your empire realizes it. The tactical display chimed softly, indicating an incoming priority transmission. Sarah routed it to the main view screen, revealing the bridge of an Imperial command ship with markings indicating it belonged to the Grand Admiral's personal staff. The figure on the screen was one that every officer in the Imperial fleet knew by sight. Grand Admiral Thexar, Supreme Commander of all Kethari military forces and personal advisor to the Emperor himself. This is Grand Admiral Thexar to all vessels in the former battle group Epsilon. By order of His Imperial Majesty, you will surrender immediately and prepare to be taken into custody as prisoners of war. Chun stepped into view of the communications pickup. Grand Admiral, this is Captain Marcus Chun. I'm afraid your battle group is no longer in a position to surrender to anyone. Grand Admiral Thexar's expression shifted from authority to barely controlled rage. Captain Chun, you are responsible for the deaths of thousands of Imperial personnel and the theft of critical military assets. Surrender now and face trial or be hunted down and destroyed like the pirate you are. Grand Admiral, no Imperial personnel have been killed by human forces during this operation. Your people are all alive and, well, working alongside our crews to maintain the ships they once commanded. Impossible. I'd be happy to arrange a video conference with any of your officers to confirm their well-being. Admiral Korax, perhaps you'd like to speak with your Supreme Commander. Admiral Korax looked between Shun and the view screen, clearly torn between duty and the evidence of his own eyes. Finally, he stepped forward. Grand Admiral, I can confirm that human forces have treated captured personnel with appropriate respect and dignity. No one has been harmed. Admiral Korax, report on your tactical situation. 9 Imperial vessels under human control. My battle group was surrounded and outgunned approximately 20-1. Resistance would have resulted in the destruction of all ships and the death of all personnel. Grand Admiral Thexar's mandibles clicked in frustration. What are the human demands? Chun stepped forward again. We want to go home, Grand Admiral. All of us. Every human in Imperial space, every family separated by conquest, every child working in Imperial factories and mines. We want to return to our worlds and live our lives without interference. Impossible. Those worlds are now Imperial territory. The populations have been integrated into imperial society for their own benefit. Then, we have a problem, Grand Admiral, because we're not leaving without our people. You are 23 humans with 9 stolen ships, facing the combined might of the Cathari Imperial fleet. What makes you think you're in a position to make demands? Sarah's station chimed again, and she looked up with a grin. Marcus, I think the Grand Admiral needs an update on current events. Put on the main display. The tactical screen shifted to show a galaxy-wide strategic overview. Red markers indicated locations of reported uprisings. Yellow markers showed Imperial forces moving to respond, and blue markers represented confirmed human resistance operations. As they watched, new markers appeared with disturbing frequency. Grand Admiral, Chun said quietly, you're looking at 47 separate rebellions across 26 star systems. Every world the Empire has conquered in the past 5 years is experiencing some form of organized resistance. Your peacekeeping forces are requesting immediate reinforcement from sectors that can no longer spare the ships. Grand Admiral Thexar stared at the display in shock. This is impossible. Our intelligence indicated human resistance was limited to a few scattered survivors. Your intelligence was seeing exactly what we wanted them to see. Broken, defeated, hopeless refugees hiding in the dark corners of the galaxy. But, Grand Admiral, humans are very good at pretending to be something we're not. The display updated again, showing massive fleet movements as Imperial forces rushed to respond to the spreading chaos. As Chun had predicted, the Empire was committing everything to crush the rebellions and hunt down the human fleet. You see the problem, Grand Admiral. Your Empire rules through fear and force. Remove that force, and people remember what freedom tastes like. The rebellions will be crushed. Order will be restored. Some will be crushed, certainly, but others will succeed. And with every success, more systems will find the courage to resist. How many rebellions can your Empire handle simultaneously? Grand Admiral Thexar was quiet for long moments, studying the strategic display and clearly running calculations in his head. When he spoke again, his voice had lost much of its authority. What exactly are you proposing? Captain Shin looked at Grand Admiral Thexar's image on the view screen, seeing the first cracks in the Supreme Commander's absolute confidence. The tactical display continued updating in real time, showing the spreading chaos across Imperial space as more systems erupted in rebellion. I'm proposing a negotiated settlement, Grand Admiral. A way for both our species to coexist without constant warfare. The Empire does not negotiate with terrorists and pirates. Then, don't negotiate with terrorists and pirates. Negotiate with the representatives of 47 worlds that have chosen freedom over imperial rule. Chun gestured to the tactical display. Because that's what this has become, Grand Admiral. This isn't about 23 humans stealing some ships. This is about the fundamental right of sentient beings to determine their own destiny. Commander Zura-TH watched the exchange with growing fascination. She had spent her entire career believing in the absolute superiority of imperial military doctrine, but the humans were rewriting the rules of warfare before her eyes. They weren't trying to outfight the Empire. They were making fighting itself irrelevant. Grand Admiral Thexar consulted with staff officers who remained off-camera, their voices a low murmur in the background. When he returned his attention to the screen, his expression was harder. Captain Chun, even if I were inclined to consider negotiations, the High Council would never agree to surrender Imperial territory to rebellious subjects. Who said anything about surrendering territory? Grand Admiral, let me ask you a question. What is the Empire's ultimate goal in expansion? To bring order and prosperity to chaotic systems. To unite the galaxy under benevolent imperial rule. To exploit the resources and labor of conquered worlds for the benefit of the Cathari homeworlds, Chun countered. But what if there was a way to achieve the same economic benefits without the costs of occupation and suppression? Sarah looked up from her engineering station. Marcus, we're getting priority signals from New Geneva. The local resistance has taken control of the industrial centers and is requesting immediate evacuation support for non-combatants. How many? Approximately 50,000 civilians, mostly families with children. Imperial forces are massing for a counterattack. Chen's expression grew grim. Can we get ships there in time? Not without revealing fleet positions. The nearest available vessels are 6 hours away. Grand Admiral Thex AR had been listening to the exchange. Captain, if you're truly concerned about civilian casualties, order your rebels to stand down. Imperial forces will accept surrender and restore order with minimal bloodshed. The way you restored order on Kepler 442b? By putting 10-year-old children to work in mining tunnels that adults can't navigate. The Empire provides employment and purpose to idle populations. Without Imperial guidance, those children would be starving on the streets. Without Imperial conquest, those children would be in school learning to build a better future for their people. Chen's voice carried an edge of controlled anger. Grand Admiral, I've seen what Imperial benevolence looks like. Mass graves on Proxima Station. Forced sterilizations on New SETI. Labor camps on Europa 7. This isn't benevolence, it's systematic exploitation. Admiral Korax stepped forward, his expression troubled. Captain, those are serious accusations. The Empire maintains strict protocols for the treatment of subject populations. Does it, Admiral? Commander ZRTH, you've served throughout Imperial space. Have you ever personally inspected conditions on occupied worlds? ZRTH hesitated. The question touched on something she had always avoided thinking about too deeply. My duties have focused on military operations, not civilian administration. But you've seen the reports. The production quotas, the population transfers, the efficiency improvements in colonial management. Those are administrative matters, not military concerns. Are they? Subcommander Vexen, what happened to the population of Tau Ceti III after the Empire annexed the system? Vexen looked uncomfortable. Initial population was approximately 3 million. Current census shows 2.1 million. Where did the other 900,000 people go? Some were relocated to other systems where their skills could be better utilized. Others, there were unfortunate incidents during the integration process. Unfortunate incidents. Chen's voice was flat. Mass executions for failure to meet production quotas, you mean? Or deportations to forced labor camps for attitude adjustment. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of ship systems and the occasional update chimes from the tactical display. Even Grand Admiral Thex AR seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Sarah broke the silence. Marcus, priority update from the Deep Space Network. Imperial Battle Group 7 has engaged human forces in the Vega system. Casualties? Unknown at this time. Our people are reporting successful deployment of Cascade protocols, but several human ships were damaged during the initial engagement. Chen closed his eyes for a moment, and ZRTH could see the weight of command settling on his shoulders. Every decision he made put lives at risk, both human and alien. Signal all fleet commanders, he said finally. Phase 3 is now active. Begin full-spectrum information warfare. What's Phase 3? Admiral Korax asked. Sarah's fingers danced across her control panel, and the bridge's communication systems activated. Across Imperial space, carefully hidden transmitters began broadcasting on every available frequency. Phase 3 is truth, Admiral. Every Imperial citizen, every occupied world, every conquered population is about to learn exactly what their empire has been doing in their name. The main view screen split into multiple feeds showing broadcast centers across dozens of systems. Human voices, speaking in perfect Kethari and dozens of other alien languages, began transmitting detailed documentation of Imperial atrocities. Medical records from forced sterilization programs, financial records showing resource extraction quotas that left local populations starving, security footage from labor camps and execution sites. Grand Admiral Thex AR watched in horror as the broadcast spread across Imperial communication networks. This is propaganda and lies. This is documentation and evidence, Chun corrected. Every image authenticated, every document verified, every witness statement corroborated. We've been collecting this information for 2 years, Grand Admiral. Every imperial crime, every abuse of power, every cover-up and atrocity, all of it preserved and ready for broadcast. Commander RTH stared at the feeds, showing conditions on worlds she had helped conquer. Children barely old enough to walk working in mining operations. Families torn apart for failing to meet impossible production quotas. Mass graves on planets that were supposed to be thriving under Imperial rule. This can't be accurate, she whispered. Every piece of footage is time-stamped and location verified, Sarah replied gently. We didn't fake this, Commander. We just documented it. The communications panel chimed with an incoming transmission from the Cathari homeworld. Grand Admiral Thexar accepted the call, revealing the elaborate chamber of the High Council and the imposing figure of Emperor Vexthal himself. Grand Admiral, what is the meaning of these broadcasts? Our communication networks are being flooded with seditious propaganda. Your Majesty, human resistance forces have initiated an information warfare campaign. They claim to be broadcasting evidence of Imperial misconduct in occupied territories. Emperor Vexthal's massive form shifted in his ceremonial throne. Claims and evidence are different things, Grand Admiral. Are these accusations based in fact? The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Grand Admiral Thexar spoke carefully. Some of the footage appears authentic, Your Majesty. However, context and circumstances may have been deliberately distorted to create a false impression of Imperial policy. Show me. The view screen shifted to display some of the most damning footage from the broadcast feeds. Children collapsing from exhaustion in mining tunnels. Execution squads shooting civilians for minor infractions. Officials discussing production quotas with callous disregard for human cost. Emperor Vexthal watched in silence for several long minutes. When the footage ended, his voice carried a note of barely controlled rage. Are you telling me, Grand Admiral, that these activities have been conducted in the name of the Empire? Your Majesty, colonial administration has always been delegated to regional commanders. Some may have exceeded their authority in pursuit of efficiency and order. Some may have turned the Empire into the very thing our ancestors fought to escape from. Emperor Vexthal's 4 eyes blazed with fury. Grand Admiral, the Empire was founded on principles of honor, justice, and the elevation of all sentient beings. What I'm seeing here is slavery, genocide, and systematic oppression. Captain Chun stepped into view of the communications pickup. Your Majesty, I am Captain Marcus Chun of the Human Resistance Fleet. I believe we need to talk. You dare address the Emperor directly? Grand Admiral Thexar started to object, but Emperor Vexthal raised a massive hand for silence. Let him speak. I'm curious to hear what the man who has brought my empire to its knees has to say for himself. Your Majesty, I want the same thing you claim to want. Justice, peace, the opportunity for all sentient beings to live with dignity and freedom. The difference is that I've seen what imperial rule actually looks like for conquered populations. And what would you have me do about it, Captain? My empire spans hundreds of star systems. Billions of beings depend on imperial administration for their survival. They depend on imperial administration because you've systematically destroyed their capacity for self-governance. But that can be rebuilt, Your Majesty, better than it was before. Emperor Vexthal leaned forward in his throne. You speak of rebuilding. What exactly are you proposing? A new model, Your Majesty. One based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. Trade partnerships instead of resource extraction. Cultural exchange instead of cultural suppression. Mutual defense agreements instead of military occupation. Impossible. The galaxy is too chaotic for such idealistic arrangements. Without imperial order, there would be constant warfare between competing systems. Would there? Your Majesty, most of the current conflicts in imperial space are rebellions against imperial rule. Remove the oppression, and you remove the primary cause of instability. The emperor was quiet for long moments, clearly considering the implications. Around him, Zarth could see members of the High Council engaging in heated discussions, their voices too low to make out individual words. Sarah's station chimed again. Marcus, update from the Information Warfare Division. Public opinion polls from Cathari core worlds show rapidly shifting attitudes toward Imperial expansion policies. Numbers: 73% of respondents now oppose aggressive expansion. 85% support investigation of colonial administration practices. 61% favor negotiated resolution of current conflicts. Emperor Vexthal had clearly been monitoring similar intelligence feeds. It seems, Captain Shun, that your information campaign has been quite effective. My own people are beginning to question policies they have supported for decades. Sometimes truth is the most powerful weapon of all, Your Majesty. Indeed. Tell me, Captain, if I were to consider the arrangements you suggest, what guarantees could you provide that human worlds would honor their commitments? The same guarantees any free society provides, Your Majesty. The consent of the governed. People who choose their own destiny have a vested interest in making good choices. And what of military considerations? The Empire has enemies beyond human space. The Zephyrian Collective, the Void Hunters, various pirate confederations. Without Imperial protection, human worlds would be vulnerable. Chin smiled. Your Majesty, we've just demonstrated that human military capabilities are somewhat more advanced than your intelligence services indicated. We'd be happy to contribute to mutual defense arrangements, but as partners, not subjects. Admiral Korax spoke up. Your Majesty, if I may, human tactical innovations have proven remarkably effective against Imperial technology. A voluntary alliance might provide significant strategic advantages. You would recommend cooperation with rebels who have stolen Imperial vessels and fomented galaxy-wide insurrection? I would recommend cooperation with allies who have demonstrated they can bring down the Empire if they choose to. Better to work with such people than against them. Emperor Vexthal considered this perspective. Grand Admiral Thexar, what is your assessment of the current military situation? Deteriorating rapidly, Your Majesty. We have 43 separate rebellions requiring immediate attention. Imperial fleet resources are stretched beyond sustainable limits, and public opinion on core worlds is shifting against continued military action. And Captain Chen's forces continue to demonstrate capabilities that exceed our previous assessments. Direct military confrontation would likely result in significant Imperial losses with uncertain probability of success. The Emperor was quiet for nearly a minute, studying the tactical displays and intelligence reports that surrounded his throne. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries of Imperial authority. Captain Shun, I am prepared to consider a ceasefire and formal negotiations contingent on several conditions. Name them, Your Majesty. First, all rebellions in Imperial space must immediately cease hostile activities. Second, stolen Imperial vessels must be returned or their status regularized through formal agreement. Third, human forces must provide complete intelligence on their capabilities and deployments to ensure good faith in negotiations. Chen exchanged glances with his senior officers. Your Majesty, I can agree to the first two conditions with appropriate reciprocal arrangements. The third, however, would require me to reveal information that could be used against human interests if negotiations fail. Then, what do you propose? Phased implementation, Your Majesty. Immediate ceasefire, followed by preliminary negotiations to establish basic framework agreements. Intelligence, sharing, and military status would be addressed in later phases as trust develops. And if I refuse? If I choose to crush these rebellions and hunt down your forces regardless of cost? Chen's expression grew serious. Then you'll succeed, eventually. The Empire has the resources to win through sheer attrition, even at enormous cost. But, Your Majesty, what kind of empire would remain after such a victory? What kind of legacy would you leave for future generations? Emperor Vexthul looked around the High Council chamber, seeing the faces of advisors who had served the Empire faithfully for decades. Many showed the same troubled expressions that Zar-Th had seen on her own officers. Grand Admiral, transmit ceasefire orders to all Imperial forces. Captain Shun, order your people to stand down as well. We will meet in neutral space to discuss terms. As the communication ended, the bridge of the Vengeance of Stars erupted in activity. Messages flowed between human ships as ceasefire orders propagated through the Resistance network. Similar orders were going out to Imperial forces throughout the galaxy. Commander Zar-Th looked around the bridge where humans and Kethari had worked together for hours without incident. Is it really possible? Peace after all this? Shun followed her gaze. Commander, peace is always possible. The question is whether people want it badly enough to change the things that prevent it. And if they don't, if the negotiations fail and fighting resumes, then we'll continue fighting until one side or the other decides that peace is preferable to